Hello, everybody. Hope you're all well. I'm here in the UK today to talk about some harmony, the ways that we tune our chords in VOCES8. I'm just going to let some people join and maybe just go on a little rant for a few minutes while people join the live broadcast here. So I'm in the UK right now in self-isolation. I didn't quite make it back to the US. I'm originally from America, but it makes more sense for me to be over here for this time since we're still doing all this cool live streaming stuff. I'm not sure where you guys all are, probably all over the world, but I hope you're all well. This is supposed to start in about a minute's time, so I'll just leave a little more time here. Another thing I want to mention is this whole concept, live from home. It's actually not our concept. We're sort of piggybacking with something that one of my musical idols, Chris Thilly, invented this concept, live from home, and we've sort of used it as our entire mantra for this whole live streaming thing. It's really exciting because if you're from the States, you may have heard of this cool talk show called NPR, A Prairie Home Companion. It used to be run by this really awesome storyteller named Garrison Keillor. He's still around, actually, but he's since retired, and he's passed it on to Chris Thilly. And Chris is an awesome mandolin player, multi-instrumentalist, super talented guy. And he renamed the program Live From Here. And when this whole pandemic started, he started live streaming from his house and from his car as well. He called it Live From Home, a little play on the title of that. And so we've sort of adopted it for our title of this series. We think it's a really cool concept. So thank you, Chris, for that, if you're watching this. And we should totally collab at some point as well. We actually happened to do a little bit of a collaboration on Jacob Collier's track Moon River, which was really a blast to put together. Jacob Collier, if you're not familiar with Jacob, go check his stuff out right after this. Just Google him, he's great. But he had all of his musical friends send in a clip of them singing a single long note in the key of B flat, I think it was, just on the word moon. And he layered them all together. So at the beginning of the video, you have like 2 minutes of Jacob's musical friends and collaborators all singing the word moon. It stacks up into this crazy harmony thing. And Chris Thilly's on that. We're on that. Quincy Jones is on that. Herbie Hancock, Eric Whitacre, Hans Zimmer, some really, really cool people. So check that out if you haven't seen it yet. But hopefully, if you're watching this, Chris, hopefully you're a harmony geek like me. And we're going to jump into some crazy bits of harmony now. The whole point of this chat is to talk more about what we do as VOCES8, the way that we tune chords within the group. And I've titled it a multisensory experience because for me, I think that harmony is really it's not just an aural sense. It's the way that you perceive it in terms of the way you feel it, and also the way that it rings in nature as well. So it's not just based around the aural hearing side of things. We're going to explore that a little bit later in this chat. For those of you that are just joining, I'm using a microphone over here to really get the clearest possible sound as possible. So if you can actually turn up your volume, we're going to really zoom in on some of these finer tuning things. So I've got a bunch of instruments around me and things like that to demonstrate. But as we jump into this harmony concept, I also just want to say I'm not the world's leading expert in this stuff. My entire the whole reason I'm here is to get you excited about harmony and hopefully cause you to think about some things that maybe you haven't experienced or thought about before. And I think that we talked just a second ago about the way that harmony evokes certain feelings, and it really is a way to, I think, in some things not in tune. It can make us feel really anxious. It can genuinely disturb us, I think. And this is kind of the thought behind a lot of horror film soundtracks. And I've got some stuff queued up here. So just to sort of play with your emotions a little bit, you can just tell me maybe in the comments how this theme here makes you feel. So sorry to freak everybody out from the get-go here, but as you can see, this kind of stuff, these when things aren't quite in tune, when they have this pitch kind of center moving chromatically in contrary directions, you start to feel a little uneasy. At least I do. I'm not sure about you, but that definitely makes me feel a little bit anxious. In the same way, when things are in tune, it can set off actually dopamine levels in the brain. It's really calming. Sometimes if you walk into a spa or maybe waiting for the dentist or something, they'll have some really relaxing music playing in the background. And oftentimes it's like wildly appropriated non-Western music and things like that. But a lot of the time it's chords that are just basic harmony, things that we can all kind of break down. Just things that are very accessible harmonically. And when that's in tune, it makes us feel calm. It makes us feel at ease, actually. And it also can be very thrilling. I mentioned dopamine, but there are studies that show that when something is incredibly in tune, it sets off a reaction in our brain that makes us just really, really excited. And the prime example I have for this kind of thing is really the barbershop world. A lot of my friends sing barbershop. I kind of wish that I did, but there's something about when people are singing in a really bright way, it just sets off the overtone series. And it's really beautiful. I've got some examples here. The first one I've got is a group called the Vagrants. And this is just the end of one of their songs. It's one of the barbershop tags. But just take a listen to this here. So you can hear the audience also is cheering away. Really, really exciting stuff. And actually, there's an overtone that appears as well on a high B, I think. Yeah, that note happens. And it's actually not in the chord. That's like a phantom voice kind of cascading over everything else. I think the chord is voiced like this. So the tenor's on the fifth. And if you listen one more time, you'll just hear this high octave just pop right out. And like I said, the audience basically has the reaction as if they were at a footballing match or something like that, just absolutely freaking out about it. So this is something that we should always be talking about. Intonation is I think paramount for us as performers. It sort of encompasses all areas of music. And if we're not talking about it, I think we should be talking about feeling it, even if we're not thinking about, well, I think you need to move this down, 5 or 6 cents or something. We should be talking about the way that it feels. The other day we were having a discussion in VOCES8 about how much time we actually spend tuning in the group. And the answer, I think, from most of us ranges from 40 to 60%. So it's a pretty intense amount of time. We talk about defining chords, breaking down harmony, talking about the way that things should be balanced, and also just where the pitches live in the chord. I'm just going to check to see if there's any cool questions coming in here real quick. Cool. Talking about VOCES8 here, I've got some examples of the group as well singing. We'll get more into it later on, but I just want you to pay attention to the third in this example coming up here. So we're in the key of G flat major. This is Olielo's Ubi Caritas, and at the end here, just pay attention to the third. So if any of you are have perfect pitch, or you have really good relative pitch, the note that was sung is a little bit lower than this one here. And we'll talk in a second about what that means of picking notes that actually aren't on the keyboard in some of this stuff. This is something we think about all the time in VOCES8. The beautiful thing about the human voice is that we can sing between the notes. We're not linked to any sort of fret system or key system like the piano. So we're in between these notes. We can sing da 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 da. We can sing da. It's neither one of those. So the beautiful thing is we can slide in between these notes, just like a violin can do as well. This portamento idea. But it's also, the voice is one of the most complex and versatile, expressive instruments. We just have a tremendous pitch capability. And more on this concept between the notes. The pitches on the piano are laid out in this fixed system. It's called equal temperament. There's 12 tones. The octave is split into 12 notes. This is the octave. So that's the doubling of frequency if you're actually not a musician or just a musician and also a science geek. We're splitting that octave into 12 individual parts. It's a wonderfully tempered system. It's characterized Western music for the last few hundred years, but it's not actually in tune at all with the way that sound rings around us, the way that sound naturally occurs in nature. There's this really cool thing called the harmonic series, and I'm going to use my studio here really quick to see if I can bring this up. This is called the harmonic series. Some of you have probably seen this before if you've taken a music class, or if you've gone to college for music majors represent out there. But the cool thing about this is it's kind of in all of our DNA. It's the blueprints of music and physics, math, electricity, astrology, obviously music, even rhythm. There's this thing called harmonic polyrhythms I'll get into in a second. But this defines the way that vibrations organically occur in the world around us. In essence, it's the natural music of our universe. So all of these notes here are called the harmonic series. I'll just kind of play them so you hear what it sounds like. But we have the first one, it's that low C there. And then we get up into 16. It keeps going on actually after that as well. It continues into infinity basically. But the idea is that this, if you look at number 1 there on the far left, that low C, the fundamental frequency contains within it shades of all these extra notes. So they fit into it and make up the characteristics of the sound itself, and also the way that we perceive it even. So for instance, if Johnny's singing that low C there, which he can do if he wakes up really early in the morning, the idea is that we fit into all those extra notes. In his voice, he's actually creating all these different sounds. And if we're for instance singing the third, if you look at number 3 there, if we're singing the 5th, so if he's singing this note, and let's play it a little bit louder, and my notes here, what I'm aiming to do, if I'm singing this note, what I'm aiming to do is fit into the sound that he's already creating, rather than singing a note that's written on a page. I'm actually listening to what he's singing, experiencing it, and then singing it back. So in VOCES8, I mentioned the house style of intonation is this harmonic system. Another name for it is the just system of temperament. But actually, it's not really correct to call it justly tempered, because it is just the natural way that things are tempered. And then we tune things with what we call a pyramid of sound. You've probably heard of the pyramid of sound before. Basically, what that means is that the bass, kind of creates the sound and everybody else fits into it. The bass is the loudest thing, the pillar at the bottom. And then as you move up in the tops of the soprano, it becomes a little bit thinner, a little bit more glassy on top. So Johnny makes the most harmonically complex or dense noise. And then as we move up the ensemble, the sound becomes clearer, purer. It becomes closer to the characteristics of these overtones that are listed in the series here. So in essence, Andrea kind of has the hardest job, because she's fitting into the overtones that are created way down on the bottom. She's got to be listening on a really very, very high level. And actually, if you study physics and that kind of thing, she actually has more hertz to play with. There's more notes as you kind of move up. If she's singing between these notes or something, way up there, she actually has more sound to play with than if Johnny were just singing a note down here. Just intonation can backfire, though. That's the problem with this whole thing. Is it can lead to some serious issues, which I'll get into in a second. I've got some examples I can play you. In in the end, I think that the takeaway from me that I'd really like you to walk away with is that sometimes you shouldn't actually trust your ears. You should trust your body and the way that it makes you feel. And in a second, we'll have some demonstrations, and also you can join in from home. We're going to go to this slide now, which is a little more in depth. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go back just a second here and play some examples of this overtone series. Here we go. So if you are in tune with this harmonic series here, you get things like that. I played the video earlier of that barbershop group, and suddenly this phantom note appears at the top. And that's because all of them are in tune with this series. There's plenty of other examples of really cool overtones happening. I've got a recording here from my friends in a group called the Ringmasters, and sometimes you get notes that aren't even being sung, that just happen to appear. Here's one where they're singing a chord and the ninth just appears. So we've got a triad basically, but what I want you to listen for is a note that kind of appears like a whistle, and it's going to be, it'll sound like that. It's going to be this note. Listen one more time. This note here. No one is actually singing that note. And the crazy thing is that if you do line up your harmony within this system, sometimes you get these phantom overtones that appear. They're naturally a part of the system. So maybe what's happening is they're tuning the fifth, and actually if you look at the ninth overtone, just in the middle of the screen there, you'll see that's on a D. This isn't in the key of C, I don't think, but that ninth may just appear based on the fifth, for instance. So we're going to go over to this here. Great. So in this slide here, we can, based on the overtone series, we can actually build, we can build a diatonic scale. And this becomes kind of the fundamental for what VOCES8 tunes a lot of its harmony off of. So you'll see that in red, I've linked a lot of these together. The first partial there is going to be the C that we talked about right here. And that also occurs several times in the overtone series. So that fundamental frequency is just kind of fitting in with itself, looping into itself very, very easily. We have it at 1, we have it at 3, 5, 9. Sorry, that's actually not the octaves. We have 1, 4, 2, 8, and 16 are going to be just the basic octaves. I've also circled the numbers which link to our diatonic scale in red. So the third there, the third overtone, if you look at on the bottom there, the partials, the third overtone will actually create the fifth. So if we follow that scale there, we have 1, 2, 3. So that third one creates our G. And that G is going to be 2 cents higher than the one on the piano. So it's very, very small. One thing I definitely want to address here is the concept of cents. A lot of directors, I think it's a commonly misused subject. It's a commonly misused term. A lot of directors say something like, "Oh, I think you're maybe 2 cents low," when they're singing a note that's like, it's like, "No, I think you're about maybe two cents low for my money," or something like that. They're probably more like 63 cents low on that note. The concept of cents is that there's 100 cents in every half step, every semitone. I guess I say half step if you speak Yankee like me, but for the Brits, they call them semitones. But there's 100 cents in every semitone, just like there are in a dollar. And if you're 2 cents, that means you're 2% of the way to the next semitone. So if we're in the key of C, and you're supposed to be singing a G, the fifth, da, and you happen to sing it about right here, you're right in between the notes, you're probably 50 cents flat. You're halfway of the way down to that note. So we'll use this concept of cents moving forward. A lot of music theorists use the ratios, which I'm really trying to get more into. But unfortunately, my brain is so tethered to the sense system and the piano, because I grew up playing the piano and that kind of thing. But I'll try to use both as we go through. So like I said, there's 100 cents in every single semitone. And so that third partial down there creates the fifth, which is going to be 2 cents higher than the piano. 2 cents, 2% of the way to the next note. That's extremely small, a very, very small amount. It's basically an eyebrow raise. So if you were going, you might just want to think of it just like, just a little bit higher, just raise your eyebrows. It's that kind of thing. It's more of a physical feeling rather than thinking about it hourly, I think. I'm just going to check my my messages on here. Let's see. Still cool. They say it's sounding and looking good. Hopefully you guys can hear okay. If you can't, maybe turn the volume up as we're, like I said, really zoning in on the nuances here. And I've got some examples actually as well. We're going to talk about that fifth, that very first sound that occurs that's not the octave. So this is what a just fifth sounds like. And here's what an equal tempered fifth sounds like. Two different sounds, but that's only 2 cents different. It's a very, very small amount. And if you're listening at home through this microphone and you're going into your computer screen, chances are you probably can't tell much of a difference. The second example I played is one based off of the piano. We call that the equal tempered system. The first is this harmonic system, the just system. Listen one more time. The first example, what you want to listen for is actually phasing. So when something is justly in tune with that harmonic system, there's not very much phasing in the sound. So you'll just hear something that's pure. Another name for it we can call is beatless. So there's no phasing going on. It's just, it locks in, it loops in with the wave itself. That sounds like this. Very clean, very pure harmony. And then the piano version, I want you to listen for some phasing. You kind of hear this kind of sound because it's not exactly lining up. It's that 2 cents of difference. You kind of hear very, very small amount. The other thing to say is that these overtones, they appear in a very whistly sort of fashion if you are listening for overtones, and it's something that it takes a little bit of time to kind of get your ear trained to hear them. I've got a recording here of me singing overtones. I'll see if you can hear them on here. But it's the kind of thing that's called throat singing. You might have heard like Tibetan monks do it or that kind of thing if you're a music geek like me and watch YouTube videos endlessly. But it's the sound that goes, and it sounds like this. So that you're listening for. Just listen again. And one last time, I'm actually gonna play along with those overtones so you can hear them. Great. There's also plenty of examples on YouTube of people doing it even louder than that. There's this overtone singer named Anna Maria Heffeli, I think is how you pronounce her name, but she does it extremely well, and she can also polyphonic overtone sing. So she can move the bass note. She can go and then change, so you get different melodies appearing. But check out how loud she can do it. This is just a recording of her on YouTube. And all she's doing is accentuating this series here. If you look on the screen, she's accentuating all those different overtones that are appearing naturally. And she's the thing is, all of those notes are already present in her basic sound. She's making this note. All those overtones are already present, but she's just accentuating them by doing that overtone singing. You can try it at home if you want right now. Actually, the best way that I can teach it is thinking of the vowel. It's kind of I think they call it a rhoticized vowel. But it's through the R. The American R or the Irish R as well. If you just think R, if you think R, R, and kind of close down the back of your mouth, R, and then slightly change your embouchure, your lips, maybe moving from like an oo to an o to an aw. It's a cool little party trick if you are into that sort of thing at parties. You know, something to impress the ladies, I guess. Hasn't worked for me, but you know. So, anyways, we're going to talk more about this harmonic series and how we get these individual notes. And we've got our fifth now. We've got that fifth happening there. I'm going to give you a chance now to join in and sing that fifth, and just see the way that it feels. I want you to be thinking about three things: the way that it sounds to your ear, the way that it makes you feel. We talked about that sort of the horror film element of something not feeling quite in tune, and then also the way that it feels in your body, the way that it resonates in your body. So you'll hear a note like this, and all I want you to do is just sing the fifth right here, and I want you to start a little bit high. So we'll start on this note and then drop it down over the course of 4 beats. So it'll sound like this. We're just going to lock it in. So I'll count to 4 here. I'll click on 4, and then we'll all join in on sliding down into that gradually. Here we go. Ready? And and this time, I'm going to play the note here on the piano. What I want you to do is take 4 counts, starting from that flat 6, moving down to the 5th, and then going a little bit lower into that sharp 4, and then back up to the 5th. So it'll sound like this. Your turn. 1, 2, ready, and sing. 2, 3, move down, moving further down, and then back up. Great. In your head, you might hear something kind of similar to something like. Do it one more time, and this time I want you to think about the way that it makes you feel to sing something that's like, and that sort of, that uneasiness as you sink into that 5th. One last time. 1, 2, ready, and sing. Moving down, and you're here. Moving down further, and you're here. 2, and then back up again. Great. Now, if you're like me, that sound of singing just a little bit under the pitch is it just makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. That it's not quite in tune, and this is why I think this 5th, this 2 cents, is such an imperceptible amount. Almost, you have to feel it in your body rather than hear it. Just to play one more example of the 5th, because I think it's kind of, I'm spending a lot of time on the 5th because I think it's the fundamental of all music. It's defined music for centuries. It was, you know, the most consonant interval to begin with before we even had the 3rd. So I'm going to play 2 examples of just a MIDI 5th here. One of them is equal tempered and the other one is justly tempered. The first one, I'll just give it away. The first one's equally tempered. And what I want you to listen for is the beating, the phasing. It almost will sound like, it almost kind of sounds to me like a cat purring. Check it out. And the second example, which is the just 5th, the one that appears in this harmonic series, should be a bit more pure, I think. once again, the equal tempered fifth. Here that comes. So you're listening for that wah effect. And the just does the equal tempered fifth. Sorry, this is the just fifth, the pure one. So quite a different sound. That's 2 cents. That's 2% of the way to the next semitone. So a very, very small amount. But if we can nail these fifths, we're actually setting off the overtones. The thirds appear in the harmonic series. That's the next one. So if you look at the fifth partial there at the bottom, we can get our E natural. And that partial that appears on the fifth overtone, so 1, 2, 3, 4, suddenly we have this third emerging. And I think that third is going to be about 14 cents flatter than this one here on the piano. So if you're wondering what that sounds like, well, thank goodness I have some examples. So that third, let's see, that just third will sound like this. Sorry, that's the seventh. Too early, gave you a little treat of what's to come. So that's our justly tempered triad with the lowered third. It's 14 cents lower than the piano, 14 cents, 14% of the way down to that minor third. We're still in the realm of major third. We're just sinking it slightly. Listen again. And now I'll play you the piano third, the equal tempered third. Now, I've done nothing to these tracks besides tuning my own voice on a program called Melodyne, but there's no chorus effect or anything like that. I've tuned it to make it exactly 14 cents low, just so there's no discrepancy. I'll play the examples back to back, but on the second example, I want you to listen for a phasing that happens. It really does sound to me like it's a chorus effect or something like that. Here's the first example. This is the pure, just harmonic system of temperament. And the second one here, the first one again, and the second one. So quite a big difference there. I think this is where people start to perceive the sound quite well. And I'll give you a chance now to just sing that third. So from at home, what we'll just do is tuck that third in. We'll start right here. Then we're just going to lower it slightly. So it'll go about to there. So just sinking it slightly down. Your turn. Starting from that really high. Ready? And. And we're just going to lower it slightly. And as you're doing that, I want you to think about not the way that, thinking, I'm going to lower this every single cent. I'm going to think about and hear every cent and lower it 14 cents. Think more about the way that it makes you feel and the way that third just tucked in very, very nicely. It's a certain feeling of warmth that chord has, rather than the one that's... It's much more... a little bit more tucked in, I think. And if you sing that really in tune, actually, if the fifth is in tune, you'll often get this phantom overtone kind of appearing in the sound as well. Pretty crazy physics. So once we have that third, we can get our C, we have our G, as you can see down there, we have our E. The D also appears in the harmonic series. The ninth appears in the harmonic series, and it happens to be the ninth overtone, so that works out pretty nicely. That ninth overtone, if you look at the partials down there at the bottom, the ninth is appearing, and that's going to be 4 cents higher than the piano. You can also get it if you take the fifth of the fifth. So 2 cents plus 2 more cents, you get 4 cents. That's the 9-8 ratio. And that's, just if we do have an add 9 chord, for instance, something like in Whitaker's The Beginning Stretched Out, it kind of has that harmony. We're just thinking about ever so slightly raising that ninth. And the third's just a little bit more tucked in. We also can get an F from the... Well, let's start with the B. We can get the B naturally from the harmonic system. That's the 15th partial there at the bottom, way towards the end on the right. And the major 7th, that's the B, is going to be minus 12 cents. You can also get that same... you can get the same calculation by taking the 5th, which we know is 2 cents high, and then tuning the 3rd based off the 5th. So we know that because the 5th is 2 cents high, the 3rds have to be 14 cents lower than that. We get negative 12 if you do your math. The last ones are a little bit trickier to get. The F and the A, our 4th and our 6th. The F is quite a little bit easier because all we have to do is take our octave and tune a just 5th from the bottom there. So if we take this note here and make a perfect just 5th, a harmonic 5th from there, we know that that has to lower 2 cents to make it the perfect 2 cents difference. And then our 3rd, our A, which is actually the 6th of the key, can be tuned from that point. So that's negative 16 cents based off the negative 2 cents that happens in the F. This is really geeky math stuff. But the point is, you just have to remember that the 3rds are a little bit low. The 5ths are a hair, an eyebrow raise high. The major 7ths are just a little bit low. And we're just thinking, and the 9ths are just a little bit high as well. The A is a bit tricky. The A is always hard. We can, like I said, we can tune it off the 4 chord. A nice low 3rd there. The problem is if you have an added 6 chord or something like that, if you have a C major with an added 9 or an added 6, that kind of sound, you probably should actually raise it based off the Pythagorean system. You get these consecutive 5ths, and that'll just be a little bit higher. We're not going to get too much into the Pythagorean style of tuning, but basically that one is prior to the introduction of the 3rd being consonant. Everything was based around the 5th, and so you get really high 3rds in that system, even higher than the piano. It definitely doesn't line up with the harmonic system. I also want to talk a little bit about this idea that, I hear a lot of high school choral directors, just a lot of people in general, a lot of singers that really like high 3rds, and it is an aesthetic. It's not necessarily, this, like I said, my way isn't the only way. The VOCES8 way of tuning 3rds isn't the perfect way. It is more in tune, well, at least what I think, in nature. But if you like high 3rds, that's a preference. If you want to sing your 3rds like da, da, that's fine. But I actually think the concept of high 3rds, people liking high 3rds, comes from basically just bad singing a lot of the time. I'm not saying all of it. This is kind of generalization, but a lot of people really love. They like to think high in the 3rds because all the time it's a lot of the ending of pieces. Sometimes there's words like amen or forever, and you just get these weird vowels, these epsilons, these schwas that you have to open up very, very strangely. And instead of singing something like you end up with a lot of inexperienced singers that are singing, especially in the tenor voice. Actually, I'm very guilty of it. Sort of spreading the vowel and singing something a little bit closer to ah, and then you get just kind of a flat vowel that sounds a bit like and you can even sing it high. I can sing a 3rd that's higher than this piano, but it will actually sound flat. Not a pretty sound. Now I'm just making a fool of myself. I told Barney that I'd make fun of him if he started demonstrating in his Facebook Live, and here I am doing the exact same thing. But I want you to be able to hear these subtleties. So I think actually it's more about the vowel. You can have a flat vowel in the series. In VOCES8, I said a little bit earlier that Andrea's job is to kind of create overtones of the bottom parts. So a lot of times what she's actually doing as we move up in the spectrum is she's thinking about lowering she's changing the vowel slightly. So instead of singing, if we're all singing ah, she might actually be singing something more along the lines of oh, a very sort of closed down vowel, so that she sounds as much like an overtone, as much like a harmonic as she possibly can. And that's how we get this really clean sound. You can hear it in that example of the Ubi Caritas here. Play that one more time. She's actually singing the 5th. but she's just trying to exist like this nice glassy sort of crystalline top, and all the other parts are sort of are becoming more a shade of that as they move up in the harmonic series. So in the context of that chord, we have, I think it's voiced like this. Oh, sorry. I think it's voiced like that. So we have the basses on the root, tenors on the fifth, and altos on the third, something like that. And all as we move up in that chord, the upper voices are actually thinking not necessarily man, but they're actually closing that sound down slightly to sound like this harmonic series here. Let's get into some examples now. I've got some examples of how this can go wrong. And actually, just before we move into that, I want to point out I've circled the seventh, because the seventh is a really interesting can of worms. We all love this tuning in this just system whenever we can, but the seventh can be used at certain times. Finding the right opportunity to do it is a difficulty. I'm going to play you what that seventh sounds like. If you look, as actually is also the seventh partial. If you look on the screen here, the seventh is negative 31 cents lower than the one on the piano. So if it's a B flat, we're going to be negative 31 cents lower than this flatted seventh. And that sounds like this. So it's basically a third of the way down to the next note. Here's an example of the piano version. It's equal tempered. And then the just one, the harmonic seventh. So now the phasing becomes even more obvious. If you listen to this first example, the just harmonic seventh, there's no phasing, it's completely clear, it's lined up. The seventh sounds a bit weird, but it definitely is fitting in with the waves of all the other parts. Listen for that again. And then here's the piano one. You'll hear a lot of phasing on this. Example 1, clean. Example 2. So that's quite a bit different. I'm going to move on. I would love to have you. Well, I'll do one demonstration with you guys involved. I just want you to start from that seventh that we talked about on the piano. And I just want you to sync it ever so slightly. We're going to go a third of the way down to the next note. And instead of, like I said, instead of trying to do it by ear, think about the way that it actually makes you feel. Here's our seventh. And man, if you can actually do it in falsetto, I think it's even easier. So if you go, just go, get into the head voice. Here's our note, and we're just going to sync from that seventh. Ready? And starting, then syncing it. And how low can you make it until it's a 6? Try that from home. Your turn. 1, 2, ready, and sing. And then bring it back up. Great, you sound absolutely lovely in the dirtiest way possible, the dirtiest seventh way possible. Sounds great. We're going to move on, and using all of this as our map, we're going to move on to some examples here. So here's the first example I have. I'm going to play you these on my computer here. And we can run into some serious issues. So this first thing where we have, starting from A, and we're just going to stop at the double bar. But if you look, I'll play you this little thing. So that's all tuned based on this harmonic system. It sounds beautiful. All the notes are tuned from the root. So the root's always 0 cents, exactly as the piano would have it. And then the upper parts are tuned into that. The problem is if you look at the alto, we have a third in the alto line that's moving from negative 14 cents, and then suddenly we have to raise it because we're moving to a D chord. The alto is on the same note, but it's going to be raising 16 cents from the negative 14 cents to the plus 2 cents to be moving from the third to the fifth. So, you know, you get this, it's quite a bit of pain to go from something that's like, we're in the key of F here, so if I'm the alto, I'd go, up. So raising it quite a bit. So we can do something, we're going to move to B now, or we can do something where we're going to try to, you know, create as little pain as possible. The alto is going to stay the same in that bar. If you look at the negative 14 to the negative 14 cents there, on that A natural, this is that B in the alto. And then we're going to keep the D in the soprano as the same. We're going to keep it negative 16 cents. We're going to move to the tenor for the next chord and keep that G negative 18 cents. And then we're going to keep the C the same. So everything kind of is just sinking and sinking and sinking and sinking. By the end of the piece, we're going to be negative 22 cents flat. So let's just hear what that sounds like. That's where we ended. Here's where we've begun. Ending and beginning. So that's a negative 22 cents shift, and that's all because we wanted to keep that A. Those darn altos wanted to keep their same A. So we can run into these issues here. Actually, I love the altos. They're pretty much the best part, I think. We run into these issues. If we try to tune in the just system, sometimes things shift around, and so you have to kind of pick and choose your battles with this kind of thing. We're going to move to another example here. This time we have, we're going to add in the seventh, so extra exciting. We're going to add in that harmonic seventh, the one that's 31 cents flat, because maybe we really just like the sound of how that ends up ringing in the chords. And so the first example is similar to the last one. We're at letter C here. We're going to tune everything to the bass. So all the harmonies are going to be aligned off the harmonic system in the bass, and we're going to see how that sounds. That sounds great, but yeah, the problem is that this soprano note is moving. So we're starting from plus 2 cents because we're the fifth of F, and then we're suddenly moving negative 31 cents in the same note to be the seventh of the D chord. So I'm just going to solo the soprano and see what that sounds like. Here's just the soprano part. You can sing along if you want. So I mean that's quite a big shift. By the way, guys, I'm just going to go back to I know I'm off screen, but I wanted to make this as big as possible for you guys. So we're going to go back here. I just want you to be able to see it. And if you want to sing along as well, that's great. This time at D, we're going to keep the soprano note the same. So the sopranos aren't going to shift. We're still going to have all that nicely tuned, just harmonic harmony. But that means all the other parts have to raise to meet it. And we're going to try to keep notes the exact same across. So as you see, the C stays the same in the first bar at D. Then we're going to take the D from the basses and put it in the soprano G7 chord there. And then we're going to move to the next chord. We're going to have that G that be the same, and the last chord is going to have the C be the same. So, you know, trying to keep things as painless as possible to the ear. But unfortunately, it sounds like this. Sorry, wrong one. It's going to sound like this. So by the end, we've actually ended 25 cents higher than we have the beginning. Here's the ending chord and the beginning chord. So that's quite jarring, I think. It's quite it just doesn't feel very good. The last example I have here is one of, let's see, I'm gonna go to here. This is an example of one of my favorite tunes, "A Girl from Ipanema" by Antonio Carlos Jobim. And we're just going to try to tune some altered harmony in this key. I've actually taken out all of the altered tones besides the seventh. So We just got the fundamental triadic dominant building blocks here. So no fun sharp 11s or flat 13s or anything like that, unfortunately. But we've got what we need pretty much, and this is what it sounds like if I decided to justly tune Jobim. And actually, if you look at the screen, I've kept the notes the same in the top, so they're always staying the same. Everything underneath it is shifting. Sorry, we're going here. So, to me, that sounds pretty heinous. I'm not sure about you guys, but it's not the most pleasant thing to listen to if you have everything shifting around like that. And so that leads to my last point, is that in VOCES8, if we have extended harmony beyond the seventh, even with just the seventh, we tend to temper it based off the piano. So any sort of chords involving, that kind of thing, even at a ninth sometimes, but especially harmony that's altered, if things like any of those sharp 11, 13 kind of things, we always tune that based on the piano. We tried to do it actually with Jacob Collier as well, with his tune Home Is, which opens up his Jesse album. And we tried to tune as much of that in the just system as possible. And the effect is really cool, I think, but it doesn't exactly work the exact same when we're doing stuff with our own VOCES8 repertoire. And so even if we have things, I even think the major seventh at times should be in the equal tempered system. It's just the sound that we're used to. And the reason being for that, this is my preference, but the reason for that is simply that this music, a lot of it was inspired off the piano. And so if we decided to tune things crazy that weren't on the piano, it just wouldn't sound like that sort of music anymore. It wouldn't sound like jazz. It wouldn't sound like that same palette that we're used to hearing. The last thing I want to move to is just a fun exercise I can do with you guys at home. And this is, I'm just going to play it here. I'll have everybody on the soprano part. And basically it'll sound kind of like... So we just a basic sort of progression of a 2-5-1-6, common thing that we hear a lot of time in music. And we're just going to sing the soprano part. So that's la, it goes like this. Da, 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 da. Your turn. Ah, just an ah, ah. One more time through. Ah. And that's just based on the equal tempered system, but if we wanted to tune this in the just system, we would have a minor third that's plus 16 cents. The minor thirds are quite high in the harmonic system. I didn't get to that earlier, but we want to make sure they're 16 cents high. That's the interval between here. I'll just go back and talk about that for a second here. That is the interval between the sixth harmonic and the fifth harmonic. I've circled those notes there. So we have a +2 fifth, and then a -14 fifth, third, which is the fifth harmonic. And so between that stuff, we have to make sure there's 16 cents ringing. So if we're in the key of C, that minor third there is quite wide. So we're moving back to this exercise here. Get us back into the temperament there. So if you want that minor third to be in the harmonic system, we need to make sure that's nice and high. The seventh of the next chord on the same note needs to be quite low, so it has to go da, da, then we're syncing that note. The third of the D, the F sharp, needs to be pretty low, and then we're going to raise it again to be the fifth of B, da, 2 cents high on that note. In the end, you'll get something that sounds a bit like this. Go ahead and sing along from home, that top part. We're going to take a listen to just what that top part's doing, what your part's doing there. In essence, you should be basically doing this. That's the same note. And again. So this time we're all going to try and join in and sing justly these chords in the just system, in the harmonic system. And it's funny because by itself that sounds really bad to me. You know, this difference right here. Sounds really bad, but in context of the whole thing. It's almost imperceivable, I think. It's imperceptible. It's something that I really struggled to hear. I can feel the difference, but not necessarily hear the difference. It's really interesting. So we're all going to join in this time and try to sing, as I've indicated, that low third, low seventh, high major third, and high fifth. So we're starting with that high minor third there. Here we go. Ready? Brighten it. High minor third. Low flat seven. Low major third. High fifth. Sounding lovely, guys. Sounding absolutely lovely. I just want to wrap this up by saying that once again, I'm not the be all end all in this kind of stuff. I'm not the world's leading expert in intonation or anything like that. But I can tell you the way that we tune things in the group. And my point in this whole thing is just to get you excited about harmony, to get you thinking about things you maybe haven't thought about before in terms of the system. Some people ask me, like, what are some ways that I can work personally on hearing the differences in this kind of stuff? And I would talk about more feeling the difference, once we said earlier. But one thing you can do that I really think is fun is to start creating fifths with machines, like microwaves or toothbrushes are really good. Sometimes fans are really good. You can create harmony with them. I'm not sure how many of you do that. If you do that, leave a comment that says that you're one of the geeks like me that tunes with their microwave or something. But you can do things just if you have a drone doing something and just playing where that fifth lives. Another fun exercise is if you are fortunate enough to have noise-canceling headphones, real noise-canceling headphones, you can put them on, cancel the sound of your own voice even, and with someone else. These aren't the sort of thing that you can, because if you plug your ears, you actually can hear yourself even better, unfortunately. So if you want something that's going to cancel out everything, get with a friend and sing a fifth really, really loudly, and just pay attention to the way that it makes you feel, the way that it resonates in your body, or it resonates in the room, even like that. You can hear the sympathetic vibrations. You can feel the sympathetic vibrations. I once had a theory lesson at Western Michigan University, an oral skills lesson with someone that was actually deaf, and she could hear the difference. She could feel the difference in semitones because of the vibrations. So things like, there's a certain vibration that has, as opposed to that, which is a little bit faster, really slow vibrations, and really clean vibrations, obviously the cleanest of all. But she was able to identify things just by putting her hand on the piano and feeling that vibrate. She'd say, "That's a minor second. That's a second." So there are ways we can actually start to perceive and experience harmony that's not just based on our ears. And the last thing is you can just listen to popular music that borrows that kind of thing. There's some people that split thirds. There's other exercises you can do. Like I really like to split the minor third. That's something that Jacob Collier does a lot as well, is splitting this thing. So instead of da da da, you have da da da, which is neither or that note. It's in between those notes. So there's certain melodies you can sing just to yourself. Things like the snake theme is a good one, like da 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 da, and really finding that da 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 da. So it's not da and it's not da. It's in between those two notes. Another good one is God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. There's lots of minor Christmas songs for some reason, but finding that kind of thing, God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Finding things like that you can just play around with and expand your ear to hearing those in-between notes. For choirs, a great thing you can do is just sing a triad and have people shift over the course of 4 clicks like we did at the beginning. So starting here and moving down, really just bending, being as dirty as possible about that. Long till we land on the 5th. Experiencing all the slides. We did that a lot in VOCES8. So that concludes my little session here. I've taken up an hour. I hope you've enjoyed some of it. And if you have any questions, do drop me a line. I probably will do another one of these, expanding even further into it in the future. So if you have any questions, I'll be sure to answer that stuff, especially things about the way that we tune chords in VOCES8. Hopefully it's been exciting and you've thought about some things that maybe have never occurred to you before and experienced some things that you've never experienced. And I hope you're having an excellent time wherever you are self-isolating, if you are self-isolating, hopefully. And we'll look forward to seeing you again when we start touring, hopefully sooner than later. See you guys. Thank you for tuning in.